Hello, everyone, and welcome to the New Jersey Youth Soccer State Certificate course, formerly known as the F course. My name is Coach Lou Mignon. This course is being brought to you via webinar in response to an unfortunate and unexpected series of events that have prevented us from delivering an in-person course. And I hope that I can make this course meaningful for your needs as a coach of youth players within the state of New Jersey. This course is designed for the beginner coach. So this may be a parent coaching their child who is having his or her first experiences within the game, or this could be for a former player who is now getting involved as a coach, working as a volunteer, or perhaps even a compensated coach within a club affiliated with New Jersey Youth Soccer. This course does satisfy the minimum standard required by the New Jersey Little League law. And if you'd like any further information about the New Jersey Little League law, please refer to New Jersey Statute 2A 62A-6. One of our responsibilities for completing this course is to design your personal coaching philosophy. And your coaching philosophy should encompass some ideas related to your function within these 6 tasks of a coach. These tasks include coaching games, coaching training sessions, leading the player, leading the team, managing the performance environment, and leadership development, which begins with leading oneself. Coaching games, when we think of the competencies related to that task, we think of all that goes into game day. This would include, but is not limited to, things like arranging for the game to be played in the first place, organizing the field location, communicating that to opposing team coaches, and ensuring that there are referees assigned to the match. This also involves providing GPS directions or addresses to families within your team so that everyone knows how to get to the game, information regarding the time that the players should arrive, the equipment that they should have with them, whether or not they would need to bring their own soccer ball, or what uniforms they would need to bring with them in case of colors being the same with the opposing team, and perhaps a lineup by positions, and substitution patterns should be planned out, and the training session activities for the week leading up to the game. Hopefully that could be brought out within the game itself. Points for discussion in a pre-game talk with the team, and perhaps ideas for a halftime talk based upon observations of the first half. And post-game, ensuring that all players are okay, not injured, and that they are released to a proper adult that will take them home. And we'd also think about things like making sure that we're properly equipped with things we need as a coach, such as a first aid kit, ice, and a cell phone for emergency contacts. We would also carry a list of those numbers that we would need to contact for an adult in supervisory status for a child that is not present. We'd also like to have with us an emergency action plan so that we can delineate responsibilities ahead of time so that in case of an emergency, we are not winging it, so to say. We have a series of steps already planned out for the events that are unexpected. Coaching training sessions, we would think about the area of the field that we have, when players arrive, where they would report to, where on the field parents should bring children, things that would relate to safety, that children wouldn't be dropped off in a parking lot to run across a busy parking lot to enter the field, that parents would enter and exit in one location so that the coach can see who the child is coming and going with. For coaching training sessions, we remind parents of the 2 adult rule so that the coach is not left alone with any single child at the field at the end of practice. We would design a training session in advance, perhaps using some type of digital format to simplify graphics and the designing of the actual practice plan. We would identify the developmental goals for a team and the developmental needs of the players based on their age, and create a developmentally appropriate training session so that a seamless transition from phase to phase within the section can occur, and players will not have downtime for things like horseplay and boredom. Training sessions would also call to mind ideas such as, what time of the day is a training session taking place in? Can we keep children out of the sun during the hottest times of the day? Do we ensure that players have water with them? Do we have sealed bottled water available for those who forget to bring water? Do we have properly inflated, size-appropriate balls? Color-coordinated discs, which typically come in handy during different phases of a training session so that players can understand which phase we are in based upon the color of the disc that's being used. Pennies, do we have enough color-coordinated pennies ready to go so that we don't have to fumble for equipment while children are waiting around for us? And do we reflect upon the training session and game, for that matter, to articulate and identify our learning needs as a coach so that we can better serve players the next time we come to the field? Leading the player, can we provide unconditional individual attention to each player? Can we be specific in our feedback to them, as opposed to saying vague things to the player such as good job, great shot? Can we be specific in talking about what was great about the game? What did the player do really well? What could the player perhaps improve upon, and what might be the action steps moving forward for that player? Can we address a player by name, and can we value that player's input? Can we use guided questions and listen to the answers each player provides to not only value their input, but promote a culture of listening? Leading the team, can we identify learning needs and goals for that age group player? Can we figure out what are the best practices in terms of motivating players of that age? We can perhaps seek a mentor who might be a school teacher of children of that age to come up with ideas to help stimulate and motivate players and meet their basic needs of fun and development. Managing the performance environment, do we work well with fellow coaches and board members within our club so that a an environment can be provided to players that is free from any form of external stress that does not have to do with the game? Can we involve, inform, and inspire parents to learn what their children are learning so that they can support our goals and objectives throughout the course of a season? Can we follow up with each of those stakeholders, such as club leaders, fellow coaches, and parents, to improve the environment for the players? Because we believe that better coaches create better environments, which in turn facilitates the growth of better players. In terms of leadership development, can we identify and articulate our own learning needs through reflection? And can we create action steps moving forward to become better coaches? We're going to take a look at prevention and care of soccer injuries, the most common soccer injuries. I'd like to encourage you to conduct the training courses and complete the training courses for CPR and AED offered by the American Heart Association. These certifications are typically good for 2 years, and many of the facilities that we are having youth soccer events taking place at are equipped with AED units, and these units have saved many lives over the past several years, and it behooves us as leaders within youth soccer environments to be properly trained and certified in the use of AEDs. The most common types of injuries in soccer are contusions, strains, sprains, dislocations, fractures, and bleeding. One of the cornerstones of first aid that we provide as coaches is RICE, rest, which is the removal from the player from whatever the activity is and getting them rest. So rest, ice, compression, which is illustrated in the picture on the lower left-hand side, compression with plastic wrapped around the ice, and elevation. So getting the injured portion elevated to aid in the reduction of swelling. So the general rule for applying ice would be 20 minutes on, 20 minutes off, and 3 consecutive go-arounds with the application of ice is recommended. Resting a player and elevation is also part of this plan. Other common injuries are cuts and abrasions. So we would ask you to bring with you in your first aid kit a pair of non-latex gloves. Non-latex gloves are a thoughtful component for players that have allergies to latex, and always glove up when handling a player that is bleeding. We can use sterile water poured over the wound and utilize some bandages, gauze type of bandages, to clean off any debris that's on top of a cut, and place a bandage that would cover the bleeding or scraped or abrasion portion of the skin effectively. If the bleeding is severe, we would move to a 911 call. Nosebleeds, we apply pressure to the area just below the bridge of the nose, and if we can utilize ice as an additional measure to stop bleeding, we recommend that as well. The player should be in a sitting position with their head forward, and if the bleeding does not stop within a minute or so, this could be a serious situation that would require a call to 911. Heat illness, in addition to taking a look at this slide and identifying the difference between heat cramps and heat exhaustion, I would suggest that you take the heat illness prevention course, which is free of charge and available through the NFHS website. So that is nfhs.org. A serious situation such as heat stroke, which we'll look at soon, could be life-threatening. So take a look at what heat cramps would require a coach to do. Is that if we see a player that is having cramps in the muscles of the leg, arm, or abdomen after vigorous exercise in hot weather, we would look to get that player into a cool place, get them resting, and have them drinking plenty of fluids. Heat exhaustion, which would be more serious than heat cramps, is when the body temperature is raised and a player could be feeling sick or dizzy. The sweating has caused the skin to be clammy. We would look for a player to loosen his or her clothing, get them into a cool place, get plenty of fluid in them, and contact 911. Heat stroke, which is life-threatening, as I mentioned, is the most severe form of heat illness. This is when the body temperature is so high that sweating stops, and this could also be an indication of dehydration, and a player's skin is hot and dry. Players with heat stroke could become confused or even unconscious. This would be an immediate call to 911, and obviously getting the player into a cool area, loosening clothing, dousing with water, and fanning the player would be immediate steps that we could take after that call to 911. A concussion is not necessarily due to a collision of heads. This could simply be the result of a collision and a jarring of the brain, which occurs within inside of the skull. So we would learn more about concussions through the Centers for Disease Control concussion awareness training, also known as Heads Up, which is required of every coach in youth sports within our state. We, in our state, not only have to complete this training, but we are required to produce a certificate of this training upon demand of an official at a public school facility if we are coaching at any of those locations. So please complete this CDC Heads Up training for concussions and carry with you at all times the certificate of completion. In documenting any injury or incident for that matter, we want to make immediately the appropriate notifications to authorities warranted. In cases of injury, 911 and a call to local police, fire, EMS dispatch would be the notification that is made. We would, at the conclusion of the event, document the actions that we took in terms of treatment and notification for assistance of the player, and a proper follow-up would also be documented, what we did after the event in terms of following up on the condition of that child who was injured and perhaps transported to a medical facility.